So I was thinking, actually, I have this thing when I'm presenting that you're usually asked to send the presentation beforehand, and I'm thinking, like, I have no idea what this crowd is going to be like and what I would want to do. And so just about 2 minutes ago, I added a couple of slides in the beginning, and I don't really know why, but I was thinking that we're coming from so many different points, and I just wanted to tell you where my point is, where I came from, because I was a DJ. And, you know, a DJ is about understanding how you put together things and how you make things that can be not that interesting to have some kind of interest together. So I started, with a couple of friends, I started a club in Stockholm, and this is basically what was happening there. And what does this have to do with what we're going to talk about now? Well, you know, when you have a club, you have to do this, right? You have to make some invites. So I started to make invites, and that's when I decided that I'd like to design.
Welcome to the United States.
So besides the fact that we all should actually listen to this whole song because it's very great, that's this for this part of the presentation, and then that's where I came from. And from making communication that moves you, I've started to work with communication that can maybe change you. So communication for change, communication for good. So this communication for good, like when we're doing that, for me, it's about finding some kind of the minimal nucleus of what's true. Like taking away everything that's not important, and then going into like what this really, really, really actually is about. And that's a journey that sometimes can lead you to very interesting conclusions about what the causes of things are. Once you've found that origin, or maybe there's 2 or 3 origins, because the world is complex, then you build from there. So you kind of do your own work and just eliminate everything that you started with. And the reason is that if we're going to look at how communication in the world of good looks today, then it looks pretty much like this. These are incredible organizations, and I'm working with a lot of them. Maybe you should know the Lancet report. This is the Rockefeller philanthropy. It's 100% important. There's 100% urgency. And there's 100% heart in all of this work. And there's also 0 excitement. Like, I can try this. And I don't know if it helps. So, if the work I'm doing, the work that we're doing at the New Division, if that could be described like inspire people to take action to change the world, I'm all for that. But if someone would present me this way, like I would totally find something else to do. So meanwhile, in the world of advertising, we're asking people to pee on their paper, on their magazines. We're asking people to Google things to find out for themselves. I guess we're not asking people to bake here, but it's good advertising today puts a twist on something and it makes you think about it. I love this, by the way. And also, like, you can do things with your life. You can surf while you have the right car, only then, obviously. Only if it's a Skoda. Otherwise, the beach is not for you. But they're talking about an egen väg. So it's like, yeah, do your thing. A lot of language in advertising are tying up to this. So, communication for change. I feel like, for me, this is such an opportunity because I always loved advertising. I've worked with advertising a long time, and I loved the intelligence of it. And I just hated what I helped doing. I just hated the fact that someone was going to, more people are going to watch a stupid show or buy something that, you know. When we started to work with Apple, I was happy because I've adored Apple since I owned my first Mac. I would not be standing here if it wasn't for Apple, because I didn't go to any design schools. I just learned by having this magical box. But things happened. We thought that Facebook was a cool thing in the beginning too. And now it's the biggest tool for putting in oppressive governments around the world. This is where my communication for change journey started at the UN in 2014. I got this amazing document. The Road to Dignity by 2030. Okay. We have 15 years. We have a road there. What's going to happen? We're going to end poverty, transforming all lives, and protecting the planet. And you're just like, this is the best, and it is. Like, how can the UN, with all its million people, 193 countries, how can they do something that is so crisp and clear? There's a poetry in it almost. And this is the document. I mean, it might as well just look like this. Like, what now? But I had already accepted that I would make this something that people would love, to make the goals popular. So I started and I realized complexity is good. And this is something that you should just tattoo on your, that should be your sleeve. It's just going to be that all over it. Because if we forget this, then we're going to have people who are just going to drag civilization down into a dark hole. And it's happening in Italy and Brazil and America and the UK. And the Scandinavian countries have also, it's like fluttering somewhere, waiting to strike. But it's hard to understand also. And in between these two statements, that complexity is good and hard to understand, that's where the mold gets in. That's where you have the populists going in. Because they're saying that, well, this world is too complex. Let's make it easier. Immigrants, they come here with their fucking cultures. Sorry. Weird cultures. We can't have them. They don't understand anything about Kai Frank. I was going to show you my Kai Frank collection, which is huge and brings me so much joy. So our job is to not like simplify, because then you end up with the Boris Johnson. Our job is to embrace complexity. Listen to some Johann Sebastian Bach, and then you know what you're talking about. It's the most lovely thing that has been done by twisting notes together. Okay. That's the third part. We're changing that. To me, as being Swedish Scandinavian, it feels a little bit salesy. Complexity is good, but hard to understand. We're changing that, yeah. But that's what we're trying to do. So the first thing you have to do is to simplify languages. So you take whatever language you have. In this case, it was the 17 goals. And you read and you say, do we really need all of that stuff? End poverty in all its forms everywhere. Can't there just be no poverty? Because also we're talking about a 30-year span. We're talking about not a journey. It's going to be a journey, but we want to set the stake there. End hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. No hunger. It becomes so easy. Ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Fine, just give us quality education. That's what it is. Sustainable cities. But it's not only about, in some cases, like with goal 11, it's not a huge rewrite, but it's so you get the same format. And that's something that you know if you're doing marketing, advertising, whatever, that you need to get something in that you can add it together. But then when you come to higher up in the agenda, I think in the beginning, when they sat there and wrote down the first goals, they were like, let's make this really clear and short. And then when they were up to goal 15, they were like, well, okay, Finland wants to put these words in here too also. So I guess just let them talk about forests. So protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. That's what I'm working on. It's a little bit easier this way. So then, we are, after all, designers. So then we were thinking that we would do a visual language. And 17 good deeds, goals, we started sketching. Water, sun, wind. There's always when you're doing sketching that all of a sudden there's a fish and it's like, oh, isn't that the born-again fish? We should probably not have that in this context. Trees, water and sanitation. The names weren't really right there because we were working with all the things. And gender equality. And then we decided on using a color palette of 6 colors because the UN had told us that there's too many goals. 17 is too many goals. We've divided them into 6 groups for you. And we were like, okay, is this going to be logic? We'll see. But we worked with 6 groups. And so we started to make icons. This is our first icon grid that we walked up to the UN with on February 2015. They hadn't seen anything. They had no idea what we were doing. They didn't know we were changing the names. They didn't know we were doing a grid. I guess they supposed that we would do icons because there had been icons for the Millennial Development Goals. Some we didn't have symbols. They have all literally changed except for 5 and 14. 5 had minor changes like that. So a month later, we were struggling with poverty because it's very hard to write a symbol for something that you want not to exist. Water and sanitation, they told us that water is fine, but sanitation is a real kicker there. That's the important thing. You got to put, Jakob, you got to put a toilet in there. And I just looked at the whole thing, and I was thinking just like, a toilet in there, that's not going to fit in. Somewhere about the time, Amina Mohammed, the Secretary, Deputy General, whatever, called and said, Jakob, I know you're from Scandinavia, but we don't have those Christmas trees like in Africa. So, some point, where was that? Oh, it was at the very end, there. We changed them. So there was a lot of things going through. I'm going to move on. I'm just going to show what I think is fun in the very first one. Check out goal 17. Global consciousness. I love that name. I tried to sell it. And maybe if it had been called global consciousness, not everyone would have misunderstood what the goal is, because this goal is almost 100% only about what are we doing with the developing countries, what are we doing with the world, with the people who needs our help. We have to work together. So it's not wrong that it's partnerships, but everyone, if you ask any business, they're going to say, we love partnerships, we should work with other businesses, we should work with governments. And then you say, did you look at the targets? It's actually only about developing countries. And then they go, oh. Moving on. So 17 color, if we have designers here, I'm sure they see the challenge in creating a palette of 17 colors that look good together, and still the colors are as distinct as you could. It took us several months to do this. I wish I had a photograph of the studio when all the color swatches were laid out and we were just swimming in them. Final icons. Okay. And then we just thought that we would have a brand. So we were sketching on this, on, what did we say? We said 17 goals making up the globe. Became that. So now we thought that we had a full system, and the only thing we thought that we might need, well, actually we were done. We were like, fine. Everyone was like, thank you. You guys did an incredible job. Now go and work with Apple or whatever. And I was like, but I want to do this. So the first thing I was like, well, surely they should have a manifest. It's gotta be. So we wrote this manifest Imagine a world where there's no poverty and zero hunger. We have good health and well-being, quality education, and full gender equality everywhere. There's clean water and sanitation for everyone. Affordable and clean energy has helped to create decent work and economic growth. Our prosperity is fueled by investments in industry, innovation, and infrastructure, and that has helped us to reduce inequalities. We live in sustainable cities and communities, and responsible consumption and production is healing our planet. Climate action has capped the warming of the planet, and we have flourishing life below water and abundant, diverse life on land. We enjoy peace and justice through strong institutions, and we have built long-term partnerships for the goals. Oops. I didn't have the slide. I usually have the slide where I just fade out everything but the goals, because they are there in numerical order. Good for people who have OCD like I do. Then we started to see what we could do in doing illustrations, using this language to tell people what was going on in the world, and sort of putting up a span where the world was 15 years ago, where we are now, where we're going to be at 2030. So it's all about like creating faith that we can fix this. So the UN building got their projection, Davos got their... Davos is very interesting, because the World Economic Forum is sort of very supportive of this, but not necessarily their members all the time. So when it comes to engagement, we went in to a UN that looked like this. I have no idea how many meetings like this I've been in. And I think this is why a lot of people who work at the UN are really good at doodling. It's like, what happened in that meeting? And they just show you they made a full artwork, including all of their children's names with little hearts around them. So this is what we wanted to do. We want to just make this into something that people would be excited about. And we made a film.
Jag är inte bara ett nummer som anger hur många år jag varit på jorden. Och det är bara början. Från min kår växer kota för kota en ryggrad. Det räcker med en person med en övertygelse som säger: jag tänker inte stå vid sidan och se på.
Jag är en siffra att räkna med.
Jag kommer bråla mot himlens hölje.
Och det kommer kutta genom allt. Det är vi som är den första generationen som kan utrota fattigdom. De sista som kan stoppa isarna från att smälta. Det som är fel går att förändra. För länge har jämlikhet fått stå tillbaka.
Jag vägrar låta strukturer i ett samhälle jag inte valt bestämma hur jag relaterar till andra normbrytare.
En smiley på ditt nagellack och vingar av eyeliners så vass att det skär upp den mjölkvita hinna som skymter din vy.
Vi är inte bara framtiden, vi har också rätt. Rätt till våra kroppar, rätt till utbildning, rätt till rent vatten. Det börjar med det börjar med mig. Jag kommer få folk att tänka om. En rörelse just i detta nu. Vi kommer bli fler, världen kommer ses. Och sträck ut en hand, knyt en näve, höj din röst.
The irony is that my clock is at 5 minutes and I go to the slide saying we don't have time. So in 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you what you all have to do, because we don't have time. You know You know the 17 goals, and you should. They're not that hard, and they're colorful. But they don't tell you what to do, right? Even with the shorter titles. We've said life on land. Fine. It's a sticker, you can put it on your car. People can be happy that, yeah. Honk if you think things should be alive. So the thing that comes after this are the targets. And these are the targets that for many reasons I was almost banned to touch. And it's strange because the goals are categories and the targets are actually the real goals. Everybody, all the organizations that we talked to, the UN said, this is too complex. Don't go there. This is just, it's fine. People who really care about it, they're going to read it and they're going to understand it. And this is where I'm just saying information has nothing to do with communication. And if people can't understand it, why should there be there? I think for all of you, take something that you know that's really hard and explain it to the youngest person you know. That's how you learn to get really good at explaining things. I used to explain to my young sister how a CD player worked. I barely knew myself, but I kind of figured it out. So anyway, just to show you quickly how we work in 3 minutes and 6 seconds. This is target 17. This is a really important target. And it goes like this: enhance north, south, 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 and triangular, regional, and international cooperation on and access to science, technology, and innovation, and enhance knowledge sharing on mutually agreed terms, including through improved coordination amongst existing mechanisms, in particular at the United Nations level, and through a global technology facilitation mechanism. Go do it. Who signs up here? I see a few hands going up there. When I started my company in New York, I said, discard everything that means nothing. We don't want to design stuff that has no bearing. So if you would take this and apply it to this, then you would say, what the heck is this about? Well, it is about access to science, technology, and innovation. And it's about cooperation and knowledge sharing. The rest is just like smoke screens. So then, knowledge sharing and cooperation for access to science, technology, and innovation. You all know what that means. So we went through all of the 169 and made them so people can understand them. So this is how relevant they are. Under target, or goal 1, target 3, implement social protection systems. 2, sustainable food production and resilient agricultural practices. Prevent and treat substance abuse. Expand higher education scholarships for developing countries. End discrimination against women and girls. Value unpaid care and promote shared domestic responsibilities. I guess that I'm going to be really nice and say about just 75% of all of the women in this room can take this target right home and have a conversation of who's doing what at home and whether the guys are doing it only because you told them so. Full participation in leadership and decision making. Forbes just released the 100 most successful CEOs, and there were one woman there. They since went back and said, oops, maybe our methods are wrong. Renewable energy, protect labor rights, access to information, well-managed migration policies. When the water rises, we had 5 million refugees from Syria. We're going to have 500 million refugees that has nowhere to move. Affordable and sustainable transport systems, the food waste, and we're talking about circular things, right? Sustainably reduce waste generation and promote universal understanding of sustainable lifestyles. Marine pollution is not only straws, but it was a good eye-opener. Biodiversity, natural habitats, we have that all over the world. And of course, corruption and bribery, the biggest threat to democracies before YouTube and Twitter. Reliable data, new ways to measure progress. All progress in the world is just met with money. And we all know that money doesn't make you happy, so maybe there's something to think about. So there you have it. This is the periodic table of change. We made some posters of it, and then we made this, since we're designers, we made this like a color guide, but it has all of the targets with information about what's happening, about the individual targets on the back of it. And this can be yours if you go to our homepage and order one. We don't have a distributor, but we sell them at cost. Last thing is going to take 1 second. The targets help each other. So that's what the cool thing when you start to engage with the targets. There can be enormous positive effects. My favorite effect is if you take 4A and connect it with 6.2, which is you build and upgrade safe schools in developing countries and you install sanitation in them. That's where you're going to have the young girls coming, because when they have the period, they're usually in the forest. They're not welcome anywhere. All of a sudden, their safe haven is a place where they get educated. They're staying in school, continuing education. They don't have kids early. They build their trust in their self-confidence, come back to the village, becomes entrepreneurs, start to pay taxes, things go up. Like, you can see just how all of these targets can come out from one thing. That's it. We're making some websites for where you can put this thing, and right now, all we're working on is climate change in terms for the fall, where we're trying to get some different kinds of campaigns, because this is kind of the thing that holds it all together. That was too long, but sorry. I'm done.
Absolutely amazing. I didn't know how much different projects was included in this whole big project. I think it's really impressive, and reducing complexity through this kind of, I would call it this Trump method, not simplifying too much, but really sort of also going into whatever is the task, because here I can easily sort of sense that there's been a lot of brain involved in this, a lot of thinking, deep thinking, and not a sort of easy practice. And so you have a long career in advertising, and we have a lot of designers here, and I can sort of from everything that I've discussed with the designers, I think most designers, all kinds of designers nowadays really are really eager to work sort of for companies that can sort of talk about purpose and that can sort of paint their worldview clearly in front of their eyes. I would like to ask you, you have been in sort of more traditional advertising, I believe, as you described yourself. Sort of the whole new era of circular economy and more sustainable development and the change of business models. For sure, they've also changed the business models in advertising agencies and design agencies. Could you just elaborate a little bit on this? Like, how do you see what kind of change is taking place in design agencies?
Well, first of all, I know too many people who work at very fine advertising agencies, so I feel self-confident in knocking them. But I think their business model is wrong. Their business model is, you know, it's built on, we have this big paying clients that keeps us alive, and then, okay, let's do something good here for some cancer thing or for whatever it is. And that way it doesn't become, you know, all change has to come from all change comes from the bottom. We can feel that with new young people, but nothing is going to happen if the top doesn't realize that this is what we really should do. And at some point, I'm surprised that there's not more people who've already made their millions or billions that are like, oh, you know what, the world is screwed up. I'm going to stop doing this, and then
Do something else.
I guess I'm in between. I have the agency in New York, which has never worked with people we disagree with. We've never worked with Fox News or anything, you know, and we don't work with Domino's Pizza or whatever, like the absolute right-wing, scary people. But we work with just commercial companies. And what I felt that what I wanted to do with the new division, that didn't really work in that context because the budgets were different, the people who worked there were different. You had, you know, because if you're running an agency that is like really top of the line, you have people that are really expensive also. And if you're going to build something that's going to change the world, then you need young people that just want to do something. Not some middle-aged person who's like, yeah, I'll work on this, but what? I'm going to get a 10% cut in my pay. So you got to find the right people, and you got to do. I think it's got to be people who understand where the communication's got to come from, because it's not about, oh yeah, let's just put a nice-looking tagline on top of this. You have to build this like molecule by molecule from the bottom. You got to start with the words and see what they form, and then you have to be able to just go back to what did they say, what does science say, what are the political forces, and try to make sense of that. And that's not a thing that an ad agency can just like, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of this.
Yeah, so practically what you're saying is that there is, like, you're challenging us to think deeper, to be profound thinkers. And then once you have created a proper understanding of whatever you're doing, you then start sort of communicating it. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, very. I think there is like this kind of counter-trend for this kind of Trumpism, which is then being very superficial, and I think we are longing that kind of approach as well. So it's welcome. And now I'd like to know if the audience has any questions to Jakob. Any questions? After this fantastic presentation, I think it's sort of.
And I only take questions from women first, because they've done research that says that if you give a woman the question first, then all women have questions. If you give a man the first question, they just shut up.
Clearly, Sweden is behind Finland in equality, right? Yeah, I think so. It's been a fantastic keynote. If you don't have any questions, I think
We have just too many questions. There is one. No.
I think it was so explicit everything we saw. I mean, it was a very clear structure on the whole project.
I'll make a comment again about what we were talking about, established organizations, which is that you know that it's getting hard to get someone in business, especially if you're an ad person, at the time where they all of a sudden have a car or two and a house, and they're married, and they have 2 or 3 kids. And this takes a lot of financial input to keep running this. So I've met a lot of people in that category, and they're like, well, but I can't like jump off and like lose everything that I've built. Yeah, but think about those 2 then there. Your kids there, because what you're doing now is to not build a future for them. You're just saying, fuck it, someone else is going to have to deal with that later. And at the same time, you have the kids that are in the teens that are a little bit older than your kids that you're just neglecting their future, who says like, do something. And then you have Greta and her lovely friends who are really saying, do something.
Yeah,
this is going kaput. And at the same time, the problem with Greta and the movement is that they don't have the power to say, do something and actually, oh yeah, we're closing these, and this factory, that's got to come from grown-ups. And I'm not meaning that they're not grown-ups, but old people, like stodgy old, tired people.
Yeah.
They're like middle-aged people. They're going to have to go in there and say that the world matters, I guess, because we have those kids. So I guess it's not only about us.
Yeah, we talked a lot about during this day before you arrived about leading by example and taking risks. So we are in the intersection of these 2 topics: taking risks and also leading by example. Now I think it's time to thank you, and we will see what Raquel has come up with. We have this fantastic. You haven't met Raquel yet, but she's illustrating and capturing everything you've just said. So let's see what she's come up with.
Okay, for me this time the kind of thread that was woven throughout all of these talks was language. I think acts of translation. So not only where are we looking for our inspiration, is it nature, is it to try to solve the world's problems coming from our own value system? And being able to translate that into language, images, something that propels people into action. We have so many different energies, I think, that were on the stage in this second half. So the first, Grace, looking at nature. The second talk by our young gentleman from Fruit Leather, Rotterdam. Yeah, it's really wonderful spark of youthful energy. Yeah, and saying why not, and what if. And then finally, a really strong talk grounded in a very strong value system, trying to propel us forward. So I'm so inspired. What a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raquel. I would love, Jakob, I understood you have a web shop, right?
Yes.
Your company. So I'm hoping to see a tattoo. Complexity is good, so that we can all tattoo it in our arms, because I think that is a very, very good message and very good way, a takeaway of your speech. At least personally, I think it's something that we think of too little. I think it's extremely important to remember that we cannot really oversimplify things. Of course, part of design is simplifying complexity, but we can't oversimplify things in the beginning.
And if I can say just one thing else that I've been thinking about a lot, that I just like we have climate deniers. What's up with that? And then I realized that it has to do with self-confidence.
Yes.
And it's most of climate deniers are middle-aged men. And they're used to that they were the father, they know things. It's in their whole DNA to be right. And so to be right has for them being a way of life. And to say that, oh, I was wrong, that doesn't go with their picture of themselves. So they're going to hold on to that for anything. But self-confidence is not about what you know. Self-confidence is about that you know, that you can do things, and it's not what the things are that you believed in before. So they're just very insecure people who are just hanging on to the past because that's all they knew. But today that would be like someone saying, you probably had grandparents who said, oh, this internet, that's never going to go anywhere. Like digital, what is that? It's like the world is changing all the time. And then we just have these people, and unfortunately, because they're white men, they have also amassed a lot of power, some in honorable ways and most in very dishonorable ways. So that's the enemy there, to like get in to say to your dad or grandfather or boyfriend or whatever it is, say like, oh, you're just not sure enough to say that you might not be right here.
What a great wisdom to finish our day. And I'd like to see now, hands up, how many want to have courage to be wrong in the future? Yes, we'll be happy to be wrong. And thank you all for participating today. We will now continue to discuss outside. Again, share whatever you've learned today and be back in the next talk. Thank you.